The stagecoach lurched to a violent stop outside Jerome, Arizona, throwing Felicity Crawford against the splintered wood frame hard enough to bruise her shoulder, and when the dust settled through the July heat of 1878, she stumbled onto the main street, looking like she had crawled through hell itself. Her navy traveling dress, once pristine when she left Philadelphia 3 weeks ago, was now caked with layers of red dust that had seeped into every thread and fold. The hem was torn in 2 places from where it had caught on rocks during an emergency stop 2 days back when the wheel had broken. Her dark blonde hair had escaped its pins entirely, hanging in matted tangles down her back, and her face was streaked with dirt and sweat. She stood there swaying slightly in the oppressive heat, her carpet bag clutched in trembling hands, trying to orient herself to this god-forsaken mining town perched impossibly on Mingus Mountain. The other passengers had already scattered to find lodging or family, leaving her alone on the dusty street with the afternoon sun beating down mercilessly. The journey from Philadelphia to Jerome had been a nightmare of broken wheels, spoiled food, an attempted robbery that left everyone shaken, and endless dust that coated everything despite closed windows. Felicity had come west to marry Henry Blackwell, a mining engineer she had corresponded with for 8 months after her cousin arranged the introduction. But Henry was supposed to meet her here, and the street was empty save for a few miners trudging toward the saloons and a cowboy leading his horse toward the livery stable. Her throat was parched, her body ached from the constant jostling, and she felt less than human after so many days of travel with minimal opportunities to properly wash or rest. The cowboy with the horse paused when he saw her, his hand stilling on the reins. He was tall and lean, probably around 25 years old, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that touched his collar beneath his worn Stetson. His eyes were a striking gray blue, and they took in her bedraggled state with what looked like genuine concern rather than the judgment she expected. "Madam, are you all right?" His voice was deep and surprisingly gentle. Felicity wanted to say yes, to maintain some shred of dignity, but the words caught in her throat. She was so tired, so dirty, so overwhelmed by this harsh landscape that looked nothing like the green Pennsylvania countryside she knew. "I am looking for Henry Blackwell," she managed, her voice hoarse from dust and disuse. "He was supposed to meet the stage." The cowboy's expression shifted to something unreadable. He secured his horse to a nearby post and approached her with slow, careful steps, as though she might bolt. "Henry Blackwell left Jerome about a week ago, madam. Took a position at a mine in Nevada. Heard he left in a hurry." The words hit her like a physical blow. Felicity felt the world tilt sideways, black spots dancing at the edges of her vision. She had given up everything to come here, had sold her mother's jewelry to afford the trip, had endured her family's disapproval and 3 weeks of grueling travel, and Henry had just left without a word, without even the courtesy of a telegram. "Madam?" The cowboy stepped closer, his hand hovering near her elbow, as though ready to catch her if she fell. "When did you last eat something, or drink water?" She could not remember. Yesterday morning, perhaps. The stage stations had been sparse and the food questionable. "I am fine," she said automatically, but her voice sounded distant to her own ears. "No, you are not." There was no judgment in his tone, just statement of fact. "My name is Marcus Garrett. I work at the JJ Ranch about 3 miles from here, but I keep a room above the general store for when I'm in town. You look like you are about to collapse, and there is no decent hotel for women traveling alone in Jerome. Let me help you." Felicity knew she should refuse. It was improper to accept help from a strange man, to go anywhere with him, but she was swaying on her feet, her vision swimming, and the alternative was collapsing in the street or trying to find shelter in a rough mining town where she knew absolutely no one. Henry had abandoned her here. She had $43 to her name and no prospects. "I do not want to impose," she whispered. Marcus shook his head. "It is no imposition. Come on. You need water first, then food, then a chance to rest and clean up. We will figure out the rest after that." He took her carpet bag in one hand and offered her his other arm. Felicity hesitated only a moment before accepting it, grateful for the support, as her knees felt like they might give out at any moment. He guided her down the street, his movements slow and steady to match her exhausted pace. People watched them pass with curiosity, but Marcus ignored them, focused entirely on getting her somewhere safe. The general store was a sturdy wooden building that somehow defied the steep mountain slope. Marcus led her through the shop, nodding to the elderly proprietor who watched with raised eyebrows, then up a narrow staircase to a small room at the back. It was simple, but clean, with a bed, a washstand, a small table with 2 chairs, and a window overlooking the dramatic valley below. "Hey, sit," Marcus said, guiding her to one of the chairs. He poured water from a pitcher into a tin cup and handed it to her. "Slow sips, not too fast, or you will make yourself sick." Felicity obeyed, the cool water like salvation on her parched throat. She wanted to gulp it down, but forced herself to drink slowly as instructed. Marcus watched her carefully, then poured a second cup when she finished the first. "Better?" he asked. She nodded, finding her voice again. "Thank you. I am sorry for being such trouble." "You are not trouble." He pulled the other chair around and sat facing her, his elbows resting on his knees. "You traveled 3 weeks to get here, and the man who was supposed to meet you abandoned you. I would say you are handling things remarkably well, all things considered." The kindness in his voice nearly broke her composure. Felicity blinked rapidly, fighting back tears. She would not cry in front of this stranger, no matter how gentle he seemed. "What am I going to do?" The question escaped before she could stop it. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his gray-blue eyes thoughtful. "First, you are going to eat something. Then you are going to clean up and rest. Tomorrow, when you are thinking clearly, we will figure out your options. Jerome is rough, but there are decent people here. The widow Murphy runs a boarding house for respectable women. The school teacher just got married and they need someone to fill her position. There are possibilities, Miss Crawford? Felicity Crawford. Miss Crawford." He stood and moved toward the door. "I am going to go get you some food from the restaurant. While I am gone, I want you to drink more water and just rest. When I get back, we will get you properly sorted out." After he left, Felicity sat in the small room and tried to process everything that had happened. She was stranded in a mining town in Arizona territory, abandoned by the man she had traveled across the country to marry, with less than $50 and no clear future. But Marcus Garrett, a cowboy she had met less than 30 minutes ago, was helping her without asking for anything in return. She did not know what to make of him yet, but his kindness felt genuine in a way that Henry's letters never had. Marcus returned 20 minutes later with a plate of beef stew, fresh bread, and what looked like apple pie. The smell made Felicity's stomach clench with sudden hunger. He set the food on the table, along with fresh coffee. "Eat as much as you can," he said. "You need your strength back." Felicity ate slowly at first, then with increasing appetite as her body remembered what real hunger felt like. The stew was simple but well made, the bread still warm, and the pie was surprisingly good. Marcus sat across from her, sipping his own coffee and not staring, giving her space to eat without feeling watched. When she finally pushed the plate away, more than half the food gone, she felt almost human again. "Thank you, Mr. Garrett. I do not know how I will repay you for your kindness." "You do not need to repay kindness," he said simply. "Now, here is what I am thinking. You need a proper bath and a chance to rest in privacy. This room is mine, but I can stay at the ranch tonight. The landlord can bring up a tub and water, and you can take your time getting cleaned up and feeling like yourself again. Tomorrow morning, I will come back and we can talk about what you want to do next. Does that sound all right?" Felicity felt tears prick her eyes again at his thoughtfulness. A bath, privacy, rest, things she had not had in weeks. "That would be wonderful, but I cannot take your room. Where will you sleep?" "The bunkhouse at the ranch is comfortable enough. I only keep this room for convenience, not necessity. Please, Miss Crawford, let me do this. No one should have to face what you have faced today without at least having a chance to recover." She looked at him carefully, searching for any hint of ulterior motive, but his eyes were clear and honest. He genuinely wanted to help her, and she was too exhausted to refuse. "All right, thank you." Marcus smiled, and it transformed his face from merely handsome to something warmer. "Good. I will go arrange for the bath. It will probably take them about 30 minutes to get everything ready. Will you be all right until then?" "Yes, I will be fine." He left again, and Felicity stood to look out the window at Jerome spread below and around her. The town clung to the mountainside in defiance of gravity, buildings perched at impossible angles, mine shafts disappearing into the earth. It was harsh and strange, and nothing like what she had imagined, but Marcus Garrett had appeared like an answer to a prayer she had not known she was praying, and for the first time since the stagecoach had stopped, She felt a flicker of hope that maybe she would survive this after all. True to his word, Marcus returned with 2 men carrying a large copper tub, followed by several trips with buckets of steaming water. They set everything up near the washstand, leaving soap and clean towels that Marcus must have purchased. When they finished, Marcus paused at the door. "Take all the time you need," he said. "The door locks from the inside. I will come by tomorrow around 8 in the morning, if that suits you. Try to rest, Miss Crawford. Things will look clearer after you have had a chance to recover." "Mr. Garrett?" she said as he turned to go. "Yes? Why are you helping me?" He considered the question seriously. "Because someone should. Because you came all this way believing in a promise that was broken. Because no one deserves to be abandoned and alone in a strange place. Because it is the right thing to do." He tipped his hat to her. "Sleep well, Miss Crawford." Then he was gone, and Felicity was alone, for the first time in weeks, with privacy and the promise of a hot bath. She locked the door and turned to look at the steaming tub. Her reflection in the small mirror above the washstand was shocking. She barely recognized herself, caked in dust and grime, her dress ruined beyond repair, her hair a disaster. Slowly she began unpinning what remained of her hair, wincing as her fingers caught on tangles. She stripped out of her filthy dress, the fabric stiff with dried sweat and dust. Her undergarments were in similar condition. She left everything in a pile on the floor and stepped into the tub. The hot water was absolute heaven. Felicity sank down until the water covered her shoulders and felt something tight in her chest finally begin to loosen. She scrubbed her skin with the soap, watching the water turn brown with days of accumulated dirt. She washed her hair 3 times, working patiently through the tangles until her scalp felt clean and her hair smooth again. As she bathed, she let herself think about everything that had happened. Henry's abandonment stung, but truthfully, she had never loved him. She had been practical, seeking security and a fresh start away from Philadelphia, where everyone knew about her father's financial scandal and subsequent death. Henry had seemed respectable in his letters, promising her a stable life in the growing West. But his actions showed his true character, and perhaps she was lucky to discover it now, rather than after marriage. Marcus Garrett, on the other hand, had shown her more genuine kindness in a few hours than Henry had in 8 months of correspondence. There was something steady about the cowboy, something trustworthy in his gray-blue eyes and gentle manner. She barely knew him, but he had seen her at her absolute worst and responded with compassion rather than judgment or exploitation. The water was cooling when Felicity finally emerged, dried herself with the clean towels, and dug through her carpet bag for a nightgown. Everything needed washing, but she found a relatively clean white cotton nightgown and pulled it on. She combed through her damp hair and braided it loosely. Looking in the mirror again, she saw herself this time, pink-cheeked and clean, exhausted but human again. The bed was soft when she crawled into it, the sheets smelling of soap and sunshine. Through the window, she could see the sun setting over the distant mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Somewhere below, Marcus Garrett was riding back to his ranch, and tomorrow he would return to help her figure out what came next. Felicity fell asleep, feeling something she had not felt since leaving Philadelphia, a sense that maybe, despite everything, she was going to be all right. She woke to bright morning sunlight streaming through the window and the sound of mining equipment echoing up from below. For a disoriented moment, she could not remember where she was. Then everything came rushing back. Jerome, Henry's abandonment, Marcus. Felicity sat up and stretched, surprised by how much better she felt after a proper night's rest in a real bed. Her body still ached from the journey, but the desperate exhaustion was gone. She washed her face with the remaining water in the pitcher, then assessed her limited wardrobe. Her navy traveling dress was beyond saving. She had one other decent dress, a practical cotton print in sage green, and one worn day dress in gray. She chose the green dress, pressing out the wrinkles with her hands as best she could. She was braiding her hair when a knock came at the door. "Miss Crawford, it is Marcus Garrett." Felicity checked her reflection once more, then opened the door. Marcus stood there with his hat in his hands, looking freshly shaved and wearing a clean shirt. His eyes widened slightly when he saw her. "You look much recovered," he said, and there was warmth in his voice that made her cheeks flush. "Thanks to you. Please come in." He entered but left the door slightly ajar for propriety's sake. "I brought breakfast." He set a basket on the table containing fresh rolls, butter, jam, and a jar of coffee still warm to the touch. I thought we could talk while you ate." They settled at the small table, and Felicity was grateful for the food even though her stomach was nervous. "You have been very kind, Mr. Garrett. I need to start making plans. I cannot impose on you any longer." "You are not imposing," he said firmly. "And I have been thinking about your situation. I spoke with Mrs. Murphy, who runs the boarding house. She has a room available and would charge you $4 a week, including meals. The school board is indeed looking for a teacher, and the position pays $35 a month. If you are qualified and interested, I could introduce you to the board chairman this morning." Felicity's heart leaped. "I taught at a girls' academy in Philadelphia for 2 years before coming here. I would be very interested in the teaching position." "Good. Samuel Grayson is the chairman. He owns the assay office. Decent man, fair in his dealings. I already mentioned to him this morning that a qualified teacher had arrived on yesterday's stage." Marcus smiled slightly. "I may have implied that the position was your reason for coming to Jerome, not Henry Blackwell." She understood immediately. He was protecting her reputation, keeping her from being known as the abandoned mail-order bride. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You have thought of everything." "I try to be useful." He poured coffee for both of them. "If you get the teaching position, you will have enough to pay for your room and board with money left over. It is not an easy life here, Miss Crawford. Jerome is a mining town, rough around the edges, but there are families here, children who need education, and opportunities for someone willing to work hard." "And what about you?" Felicity found herself asking. "You work at a ranch?" "The J.J. Ranch, owned by Joseph Jensen. I have been there for 3 years, working as a ranch hand and wrangler. It is good work, honest work. I grew up in Texas, came to Arizona after my father died, looking for a fresh start." He met her eyes. "I understand something about leaving your old life behind and trying to build something new." There was a story there, Felicity could tell, but she did not pry. "Will you be staying in Jerome?" "I come to town about once a week for supplies and to check on things here. The ranch is not far, 3 miles due west, following the creek." He paused. "I would like to check on you, if you do not mind. Make sure you are settling in all right." "I would like that," Felicity admitted. The thought of having at least one friend in this strange place eased something in her chest. Marcus's smile was warm. "Then let us go meet Samuel Grayson and get you that teaching position." 2 hours later, Felicity walked out of the assay office with a contract to teach at Jerome's school starting the following Monday. Samuel Grayson, a balding man in his 50s with shrewd eyes and a fair manner, had been impressed with her credentials and her composure. The school was a one-room building that currently served 32 children, ranging from age 6 to 14. The previous teacher, Miss Anderson, had married a mining engineer and moved to Prescott. They desperately needed someone qualified and responsible. Marcus was waiting outside, leaning against the porch railing. He straightened when he saw her expression. "You got it." "I got it." Felicity felt a smile spread across her face, the first genuine smile in weeks. "I start Monday. $35 a month." "Congratulations, Miss Crawford." Marcus offered his arm. "Shall we get you settled at Mrs. Murphy's boarding house?" They walked through Jerome together, and this time Felicity looked at the town with new eyes. It was still rough and precarious, clinging to its mountain, but it was going to be her home. The boarding house was a neat 2-story building painted white with green shutters, remarkably well maintained given the dusty surroundings. Mrs. Murphy was a stout woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a kind smile. She showed Felicity to a small but clean room on the 2nd floor, with a bed, a dresser, a washstand, and a window overlooking the street. "Breakfast is at 6, dinner at noon when the men come home from the mines, and supper at 6, Mrs. Murphy explained. "No men in the rooms, no drinking, no unseemly behavior. I run a respectable house." "Of course," Felicity agreed quickly. $4 a week, paid in advance. Felicity counted out the money from her carefully hoarded funds. After paying for 2 weeks, she would have $23 left until her first salary payment. It would be tight, but she would manage. After Mrs. Murphy left, Marcus lingered in the doorway. "You are all set then. Room, job, everything in order." "Thanks to you." Felicity moved closer to him. "Mr. Garrett, I cannot adequately express my gratitude. You appeared when I needed help most and asked for nothing in return. You are a remarkable man." Marcus looked embarrassed by the praise. "I just did what anyone decent would do." We both know that is not true. Many men would have taken advantage of my situation. You protected me instead." She held out her hand. "Thank you." He took her hand, his grip warm and gentle. "You are welcome, Miss Crawford. I will be back in town next Saturday if you need anything. Mrs. Murphy knows how to get a message to the ranch if something comes up before then." "I will be fine," Felicity said, with more confidence than she felt. "But I will look forward to seeing you next Saturday." Something passed between them in that moment, a recognition of connection beyond just circumstance. Marcus held her gaze for a long moment, then released her hand and stepped back. "Until Saturday, then?" She watched from her window as he walked back to the livery stable, collected his horse, and rode west out of town. Even after he disappeared from view, she stood there thinking about the kindness in his gray-blue eyes and the way his presence made her feel safe. The next few days passed in a blur of preparation. Felicity visited the schoolhouse to assess what materials she had to work with and what she would need to request from the school board. The building was simple but sturdy, with rows of benches, a large slate board, and a decent collection of books. She met some of the mothers who brought their children by to meet the new teacher, and she began to learn the rhythms of Jerome. Saturday morning arrived, and Felicity found herself watching the street with more anticipation than she wanted to admit. She told herself it was simply nice to have a friend in town, but the flutter in her stomach when she saw Marcus riding down the main street suggested something more complicated. He dismounted outside the general store and secured his horse, then turned and spotted her standing on the boarding house porch. His face lit up with a smile that made her heart skip. He crossed the street toward her, dodging a freight wagon hauling ore from the mines. "Miss Crawford, you are looking well." She was wearing her sage-green dress again, carefully brushed and pressed, with her hair pinned up neatly. "Thank you. How was your week at the ranch?" "Busy. We are moving the herd to higher pastures for the summer." He looked at her with genuine interest. "How are you settling in? Is the boarding house comfortable?" "Very comfortable. Mrs. Murphy is a good cook and keeps everything spotlessly clean. I have been preparing for the school term." She hesitated, then asked, "Do you have time for a walk? I would like to show you the schoolhouse if you are interested." "I would like that very much." They walked together through the morning sunshine, Felicity pointing out the places she had discovered during the week, the mercantile where she had purchased a few supplies, the church that held services on Sundays, the library such as it was, in a corner of the assay office. Marcus listened attentively, asking questions and offering his own observations about the town. The schoolhouse sat at the eastern edge of Jerome, a sturdy wooden building with windows on 3 sides to let in light. Felicity unlocked the door and led Marcus inside. The space smelled of chalk and old books and childhood. "This is wonderful," Marcus said, looking around with interest. He walked along the bookshelf, reading titles. "Better equipped than the school I attended in Texas. We had 6 books for 40 students." "Did you enjoy school?" Felicity asked, curious about his past. "I did when I could go, but ranch work does not stop for education, and my father needed help after my mother died. I learned to read and write and do figures, then left school at 13 to work full-time." He turned to face her. "I always wished I could have continued. There is something about learning that feels like freedom. That is a beautiful way to describe it." Felicity moved to the slate board, running her fingers along the edge. "I love teaching. I love watching children's faces when something suddenly makes sense to them, when they discover they can do something they thought was impossible. It is like watching flowers bloom." Marcus watched her with an expression she could not quite read. "Your students are going to be lucky to have you, Miss Crawford." They stood there in the quiet schoolhouse, the morning light slanting through the windows, and Felicity felt that flutter in her stomach again. Marcus was not like any man she had known before. He was educated enough to appreciate learning, despite limited schooling. He was kind without being condescending. He was strong without being domineering. And he looked at her like she was someone worth knowing, worth protecting, worth spending time with. "Would you like to have lunch with me?" Marcus asked suddenly. "The restaurant makes decent food, and I would enjoy the company." "I would like that," Felicity said, meaning it completely. They left the schoolhouse and walked to the small restaurant near the center of town. It was filling up with miners and workers, but Marcus found them a table near the window. They ordered roast chicken and vegetables, and Marcus asked her about her plans for the school year. Felicity found herself talking easily. sharing her ideas for organizing the different age groups and her concerns about reaching the older students who might resist a new teacher. Marcus listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and offering encouragement. When the food came, they ate and continued talking, the conversation flowing naturally from education to books to their different experiences of growing up. "What made you come to Arizona?" Felicity asked eventually. Marcus was quiet for a moment, his fork pausing over his plate. "My father died 4 years ago. He fell from his horse and broke his neck. It was fast at least, but the ranch was mortgaged heavily and I could not save it. I sold everything to pay his debts and found myself with $100 and no home. I drifted west, working where I could, until I ended up here. Joseph Jensen gave me a job when I needed one and has been fair ever since. I have been saving money, hoping someday to have my own place again." That must have been very difficult, losing everything. It was, but it also taught me what matters. Home is not just land or buildings. It is people, purpose, belonging somewhere. He met her eyes. "You understand that, I think. You left everything behind, too." "I did." Felicity set down her fork. "My father was a banker in Philadelphia. Respectable, well-regarded. Then it came out that he had been embezzling from his clients for years. The scandal destroyed him. He shot himself, rather than face trial. My mother had died when I was young, so I was alone. I lost the house, most of my possessions, my position at the academy. No one wanted to associate with the disgraced banker's daughter. When my cousin suggested Henry Blackwell as a potential match out west, I jumped at the chance to start over somewhere. No one knew my family's shame." Marcus reached across the table and covered her hand with his. "That shame was not yours to carry. You did nothing wrong. I know that here." She touched her head with her free hand. "But here," she moved her hand to her heart, "it is harder to believe. Then I will remind you as often as needed until you believe it completely." His hand was warm on hers, steady and reassuring. "You are a good person. Felicity Crawford, brave and kind and resilient. Jerome is lucky to have you." Hearing him use her first name sent warmth spreading through her chest. "Thank you, Marcus." She turned her hand over, squeezing his fingers gently. "You make me believe that starting over was the right choice, even if Henry Blackwell was the wrong man." "He was a fool to leave," Marcus said quietly. "Any man would be lucky to know you." They held each other's gaze, and Felicity felt something shift between them, something deepening from friendship into possibility. Marcus seemed to feel it too because he smiled slowly, his thumb brushing over her knuckles before he reluctantly released her hand. The weeks that followed fell into a pattern that Felicity came to treasure. She taught school Monday through Friday, pouring her energy into her students and finding deep satisfaction in the work. The children were eager learners despite their rough edges, and she slowly won over even the skeptical older boys who had thought a refined Eastern lady would not last a week in Jerome. Every Saturday, Marcus came to town. He would attend to ranch business, purchasing supplies or delivering messages, but he always made time to see Felicity. They would walk together, talking about everything and nothing. Sometimes they would have lunch at the restaurant. Sometimes they would sit on the bench outside the church and watch Jerome's chaotic activity swirl around them. Marcus told her about his work at the ranch, the horses he trained, the challenges of running cattle in Arizona's difficult terrain. Felicity shared stories about her students and her growing affection for teaching. As September turned to October and the brutal summer heat began to moderate, their friendship deepened into something more. It was there in the way Marcus's eyes softened when he looked at her, in the way Felicity found herself thinking about him during the week, counting down the days until Saturday, in the way their hands would brush when they walked side by side, sending sparks of awareness through both of them. One Saturday in mid-October, Marcus arrived in town earlier than usual. Felicity was at the schoolhouse, preparing lessons for the following week, when she heard footsteps on the porch. She looked up to see him in the doorway, backlit by the afternoon sun. "You are early," she said with a smile. "I wanted to ask you something, and I did not want to wait." Marcus stepped inside, removing his hat. He looked nervous, which was unusual for him. "There is a dance next Saturday night at the community hall, a harvest celebration. I would like to take you if you would allow me." Felicity's heart leaped. A dance was a public declaration, an announcement that they were courting. I would love to go with you, she said. Marcus's tension eased into a broad smile. Good, that is very good. He moved closer to her desk. Felicity, I need to be honest with you about my intentions. I know we have only known each other a few months, but you have become important to me. Very important. I think about you all the time. I look forward to Saturdays like they are Christmas morning. When I am at the ranch, I find myself wanting to tell you things or ask your opinion. You have become part of my life, and I want to court you properly if you are willing. Felicity stood, her legs slightly unsteady. I feel the same way. I did not expect this when I arrived in Jerome. I was so focused on survival and building a new life. But you have become essential to me, Marcus. You are the best part of my week, the best part of my new life here. He closed the distance between them, reaching for her hands. I do not have much to offer you right now. I am a ranch hand with savings, but no property. But I work hard, and Joseph has hinted that he might sell me some land when I am ready. I could build us a house, start our own place. It would not be easy at first, but we would have each other. Are you asking me to marry you? Felicity's voice was breathless. Not yet, not officially. I want to court you properly first, make sure you are certain. But yes, eventually, I am asking if you would consider becoming my wife, if you could see a future with me. Felicity felt tears prick her eyes, but they were happy tears this time. I can see a future with you, Marcus Garrett. I can see it very clearly. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away the tears that spilled over. May I kiss you, Felicity? Yes. He leaned down slowly, giving her every opportunity to change her mind, then pressed his lips to hers in a kiss that was gentle and sweet and full of promise. Felicity melted into it, her hands coming up to rest on his chest, feeling his heart pounding beneath her palms. The kiss lasted only a moment, but it sealed something between them, a commitment to the future they were both beginning to imagine. When they pulled apart, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. I am going to work hard to deserve you, Felicity Crawford. I am going to build us the kind of life where you can be happy. You already make me happy, she whispered, just by being who you are. They spent the rest of the afternoon together, talking about their hopes and dreams with a new openness now that they had acknowledged their feelings. Marcus told her about the land he wanted, a stretch of valley with a creek running through it, perfect for horses and cattle. Felicity described the house she imagined, nothing grand but solid and warm, with a porch for watching sunsets and a room for books and learning. The harvest dance the following Saturday was a joyous affair. The community hall was decorated with autumn leaves and lanterns, and someone had brought a piano from the saloon. A fiddler and a guitarist joined the piano player, and soon the hall was filled with music and laughter. Felicity wore her best dress, a deep blue silk she had saved from her Philadelphia days, and Marcus appeared in a pressed suit that made him look devastatingly handsome. They danced together, Marcus proving surprisingly graceful for a cowboy. Between dances, he introduced her to people from the ranch and from around Jerome. Everyone seemed to know Marcus and respect him, and they welcomed Felicity warmly as the new school teacher. Several of her students' parents approached her to share how much their children enjoyed her classes, which filled her with pride. As the evening wound down, Marcus led her outside for some air. They stood on the porch of the community hall, watching the stars emerge in the clear October sky. The temperature had dropped pleasantly, and Felicity shivered slightly in her thin shawl. Immediately, Marcus shrugged out of his jacket and draped it around her shoulders. "Thank you," she said, pulling the jacket close. It smelled like him, leather and sage and something indefinably masculine. "Thank you for coming with me tonight." Marcus turned to face her, taking both her hands. "Everyone can see now that we are courting, that you are my girl." "Your girl?" Felicity tested the words, liking how they sounded. "I like that." "Good." He pulled her closer, kissing her again under the stars, and Felicity thought about how her life had changed in just a few months. She had arrived in Jerome broken and desperate, covered in dust and abandoned. Marcus had seen past all of that to the person she really was, and he had given her not just help, but hope. Now they were building something together, something real and lasting. As autumn progressed into November and December, Marcus and Felicity's courtship continued to deepen. He came to town every Saturday without fail, and they spent every moment they could together. Sometimes they would take long walks into the hills around Jerome when the weather permitted. Other times, they would sit in the boarding house parlor under Mrs. Murphy's watchful eye, reading together or simply talking. Marcus began to teach Felicity about horses and ranching, while she encouraged him to read more, lending him books from the school's small library. In mid-December, Joseph Jensen invited Felicity to the ranch for Sunday dinner. Marcus rode into town to collect her, bringing a gentle mare for her to ride. The journey to the J.J. Ranch took just under an hour, following the creek through beautiful high desert country. The ranch house was a sprawling adobe structure, surrounded by corrals and outbuildings. Joseph Jensen turned out to be a weathered man in his early 60s with kind eyes and a firm handshake. "So you are the school teacher who has captivated my best wrangler," he said with a smile. "Marcus has not stopped talking about you since July." "I hope he has said good things," Felicity replied, amused. "Only the best. Come in, come in. My cook has prepared a feast." Dinner was indeed excellent, and Joseph proved to be excellent company, telling stories about the early days of ranching in Arizona Territory and asking Felicity thoughtful questions about her teaching. After the meal, Marcus gave her a tour of the ranch. He showed her the horses he was training, the cattle in the far pastures, and finally a stretch of land about a mile from the main ranch house. "This is it," Marcus said quietly. "This is the land Joseph has agreed to sell me. 20 acres with water rights to the creek, enough for a good start." Felicity looked around at the beautiful valley, sheltered by red rock hills, with cottonwood trees lining the creek. "It is perfect, Marcus. I have almost enough saved for the down payment. Joseph is giving me a good price and agreeing to hold the note. If all goes well, I can start building in the spring." He turned to her, his expression serious. "I want to build it for us, Felicity. I want to build our home here. But I need to know if you are truly certain. Ranch life is not easy. It is hard work and uncertain income, especially at first. You would be giving up town life, the convenience of Jerome. I need to know if you can be happy here." Felicity walked to the creek's edge, listening to the water burble over stones. She thought about what she had left behind in Philadelphia, what she had expected to find with Henry Blackwell, and what she had actually discovered with Marcus Garrett. "I can be happy anywhere with you," she said finally, turning to face him. "I did not come west for convenience or comfort. I came looking for a fresh start, for a chance to build something real. This is real, Marcus. You are real, your dreams are real, and I want to be part of them." Marcus crossed the distance between them in 3 long strides and swept her into his arms, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around. Felicity laughed, clutching his shoulders, giddy with joy and possibility. When he set her down, he kissed her thoroughly, then dropped to one knee right there beside the creek. "Felicity Crawford, I love you. I loved you from the moment I saw you standing in the street, looking lost and brave and beautiful, despite everything. I want to spend every day of my life making you happy, building a life with you, growing old beside you. Will you marry me?" "Yes!" Felicity pulled him to his feet, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, I will marry you. I love you too, Marcus. So much." He kissed her again, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple gold ring with a small garnet stone. "It was my mother's," he said softly. "The only thing of hers I kept. I would be honored if you would wear it." Felicity held out her trembling hand, and Marcus slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, the garnet glowing deep red in the December sunshine. "It is beautiful. I will treasure it always." They stood there by the creek, holding each other, making quiet promises about their future. They would marry in the spring after Marcus closed on the land. They would build a small house together, adding to it as they could afford to. Felicity would continue teaching until they started a family, and even then, perhaps she could teach from home. Marcus would build up their herd, train horses, make a name for himself as a reliable rancher. The ride back to Jerome that evening was different from the morning journey. They rode side by side, hands occasionally touching, engaged and planning their future together. When they reached the boarding house, Marcus helped Felicity down from her horse and held her close for a long moment. "I will talk to Joseph about expediting the land purchase," he said. "The sooner I own it, the sooner we can start building, the sooner we can marry." "I will save as much of my salary as possible," Felicity replied. "Every dollar will help us start our life together. We are going to be happy," Marcus promised. "I will make sure of it." "We already are happy," Felicity corrected gently. and we are going to build on that happiness together. Christmas in Jerome was a modest but joyful celebration. Felicity organized a program at the school, with her students performing recitations and songs for their families. Marcus attended, sitting in the back and watching with obvious pride as Felicity managed her students with grace and skill. Afterward, they walked through the cold December evening to the church for a candlelight service. "I have a gift for you," Marcus said after the service, pulling a small package from his coat pocket. "It is not much, but I wanted you to have something." Felicity unwrapped the package to find a beautiful leather-bound journal with blank pages. "For your thoughts," Marcus explained, "for recording your days, your ideas, whatever you want. I know you like to write, and I thought you might enjoy having a place just for yourself. It is perfect." Felicity clutched the journal to her chest, touched by his thoughtfulness. "I have something for you, too." She handed him a carefully wrapped package. Marcus opened it to find a warm wool scarf in deep blue, hand-knitted. "Did you make this?" "I did. Mrs. Murphy taught me. I wanted you to have something to keep you warm when you are working outside." She wrapped the scarf around his neck, adjusting it carefully. "There. Very handsome. Thank you." He kissed her softly, mindful of the people leaving the church around them. "Best Christmas gift I have ever received." The new year of 1879 arrived with cold winds and occasional snow in the higher elevations around Jerome. Marcus pushed forward with his plans to purchase the land, working extra hours at the ranch to add to his savings. Felicity continued teaching and saving as much as she could from her salary. They wrote letters to each other during the week, Marcus laboring over his words but always managing to express his feelings with touching honesty. In February, the land sale was finalized. Marcus officially owned 20 acres with water rights and a dream. He began spending his Sundays at the property, clearing the building site and gathering materials. Several of the ranch hands volunteered to help with the construction, and Joseph Jensen donated timber from his own land. The house began to take shape slowly, a simple 3-room structure that would be theirs. Felicity visited whenever she could, bringing food and water for the workers and watching their future home rise from the red earth. She and Marcus planned every detail together, from the placement of windows to the design of the fireplace. It was exhausting work, but there was joy in the labor, in building something with their own hands. In March, they set their wedding date for May 15th, 1879. It would be a simple ceremony at the Jerome Church, followed by a celebration at the community hall. Felicity sewed her own wedding dress with Mrs. Murphy's help, a beautiful cream-colored silk with lace trim. Marcus ordered a new suit from the catalog, determined to look his best for their wedding day. As May approached, the house was nearly finished. It was small but solid, with a bedroom, a main room with a kitchen area, and a small additional room that could serve as a study or, eventually, a nursery. Marcus built furniture in his spare time: a bed frame, a table, chairs, shelves. Felicity contributed linens and dishes, carefully chosen from her limited funds. They were building a home together, piece by piece. The night before the wedding, Felicity lay in her room at the boarding house thinking about how far she had traveled, not just in miles, but in spirit. 10 months ago, she had arrived in Jerome covered in dust, exhausted and abandoned, with no clear future. Marcus had appeared like an answer to an unspoken prayer, offering her kindness without conditions, seeing her worth when she felt worthless. He had drawn her a bath and given her privacy to feel human again, but he had also given her so much more: respect, friendship, love, and partnership. Tomorrow she would marry him, and they would begin their life together on the land they both loved. It would not be easy. Ranch life was hard, money would be tight, and there would be challenges ahead. But they would face everything together, and that made all the difference. May 15th dawned clear and beautiful, with the desert wildflowers blooming in brilliant colors across the hills. Felicity dressed carefully in her cream silk gown, her hair styled in an elegant twist with small flowers tucked into the arrangement. Mrs. Murphy fussed over her like a mother, making sure every detail was perfect. "You look beautiful, dear," the older woman said, with tears in her eyes. "Marcus is a lucky man." "I am the lucky one," Felicity replied, meaning it completely. The church was filled with people when Felicity arrived. Her students and their families occupied several rows. Ranch hands from the JJ Ranch sat on Marcus's side. Joseph Jensen had agreed to give Felicity away, a gesture that touched her deeply since she had no family present. As she walked down the aisle on Joseph's arm, her eyes found Marcus waiting at the altar, and everything else fell away. He looked impossibly handsome in his new suit, his dark hair neatly combed, his gray-blue eyes fixed on her with such love that it took her breath away. When she reached him, he took her hand and whispered, "You are the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. They exchanged traditional vows, promising to love and honor each other through whatever life brought. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Marcus kissed her with such tenderness that several people in the congregation sighed happily. The celebration at the community hall was joyous and loud. There was music and dancing, food and laughter. Everyone wanted to congratulate the newlyweds and wish them well. Felicity's students presented them with a handmade quilt, each square embroidered with the child's name. The ranch hands gave them a breeding pair of chickens, practical but appreciated. Joseph Jensen's gift was a beautiful Palomino mare for Felicity, so she could ride easily between the ranch and town. As the sun began to set, Marcus whispered to Felicity, "Ready to go home?" "Yes," she said simply. They rode to their ranch together in the golden evening light, arriving at the house as the sky turned pink and orange. Marcus dismounted first, then reached up to lift Felicity down. Instead of setting her on her feet, he carried her to the door and over the threshold, both of them laughing. "Welcome home, Mrs. Garrett," he said, setting her down gently in the main room. Felicity looked around at the space they had created together. It was simple, but it was theirs, filled with their choices and their dreams. "Welcome home to you too, Mr. Garrett." They spent their first evening as husband and wife, making dinner together in their own kitchen, talking and laughing, stealing kisses between tasks. Later, in their own bedroom, they came together with love and tenderness, sealing their marriage and their commitment to each other. In the weeks and months that followed, Marcus and Felicity settled into the rhythms of ranch life. Felicity finished out the school year, then decided to focus on building their home and helping Marcus establish the ranch. She discovered she enjoyed ranch work more than she expected, finding satisfaction in caring for their animals and maintaining their property. Marcus proved to be a devoted husband, always considerate of her needs and grateful for her partnership. By autumn, Felicity realized she was pregnant. The news filled both of them with joy and anticipation. Marcus became even more protective, insisting she not overwork herself. Felicity rolled her eyes at his worrying, but secretly loved how much he cared. Their son was born in April of 1880, a healthy boy with his father's dark hair and his mother's blue eyes. They named him Matthew Joseph Garrett, honoring both the biblical tradition and Joseph Jensen's role in helping them build their life. Marcus was completely besotted with his son, spending hours just watching him sleep or holding him while Felicity rested. "He is perfect," Marcus would whisper, cradling Matthew in his large, calloused hands with infinite gentleness, just like his mother. "He has your determination," Felicity would reply, watching her husband with their child. "I can already see it in how he grips your finger." As Matthew grew from infant to toddler, the ranch prospered. Marcus's reputation as a skilled horse trainer spread, and people came from all over the territory to purchase horses he had worked with. Felicity kept their accounts, managed their household, and found time to tutor several local children in reading and mathematics. Their life was full and satisfying, filled with hard work, but also with deep contentment. In 1882, their daughter was born, a spirited girl they named Flora May. She had her mother's blonde hair and her father's gray-blue eyes, and she captured her father's heart just as completely as Matthew had. Marcus proved to be a patient, loving father who taught his children about horses and cattle and the land, while Felicity taught them letters and numbers and stories. Years passed in a rhythm of seasons and growth. The ranch expanded as they could afford it, eventually encompassing 80 acres. They added rooms to the house, a proper parlor, a separate kitchen, bedrooms for the children. Marcus built Felicity a library room where she could keep her beloved books and where she taught their children and several neighbor children when she had time. In 1885, when Matthew was 5 and Flora 3, they had another son, Samuel Marcus. The family was complete, their home filled with the chaos and joy of 3 active children. Marcus and Felicity would sometimes sit on their porch in the evenings, watching their children play in the yard, and marvel at the life they had built. "Do you remember the day we met?" Felicity asked one such evening, her hand in Marcus's. Every detail, he replied. You standing in the street covered in dust, looking exhausted and lost, and somehow still dignified. I knew right then that you were someone special. You drew me a bath and gave me privacy to feel human again. Felicity smiled at the memory. It was the kindest thing anyone had ever done for me. You saw me at my absolute worst and responded with compassion. You were never at your worst, Marcus said firmly. You were surviving. You were being brave. You were beautiful even covered in trail dust. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles. I fell in love with you that very first day, though it took me weeks to admit it to myself. I fell in love with your kindness first, Felicity admitted. And then I fell in love with everything else. Your strength, your gentleness, your dreams, your steadiness. You gave me a home when I had none. You gave me love when I felt unlovable. You gave me a future when I could not see past the next day. We gave those things to each other, Marcus corrected. You gave me purpose and partnership. You made this ranch into a home. You gave me children and love and a reason to work hard every day. We built this life together, Felicity. She leaned her head on his shoulder, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. Their children's laughter echoed from the yard where they played with the ranch dogs. The horses nickered softly in the corrals. The creek burbled its eternal song. Everything they had worked for, everything they had dreamed of, was right here. Do you ever think about Henry Blackwell? Marcus asked quietly. About what your life would have been like if he had been there to meet you. Felicity considered the question seriously. Sometimes, but I think even if he had been there, it would not have worked. I was not meant to be with him. I was meant to find you. Everything that happened, even the hard parts, led me exactly where I needed to be. I am grateful every day that he was fool enough to leave, Marcus said, because his loss was my gain. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Felicity Garrett. And you were the best thing that ever happened to me, Marcus Garrett. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun completed its descent and the stars began to emerge. Inside the house, their children's voices called for bedtime stories. Marcus and Felicity stood, hands still linked, and walked inside together to tuck their children in and read them tales of adventure and romance. The years continued to pass, bringing both joys and challenges. There were droughts that tested their resilience and their cattle. There were good years when the rains came at the right times and their horses sold for premium prices. Matthew grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved working with his father and the animals. Flora was bright and spirited, constantly asking questions and reading every book she could find. Samuel was the adventurous one, always exploring and getting into harmless mischief. Felicity occasionally taught at the Jerome school when they needed a substitute, and she continued to tutor children from neighboring ranches. Marcus served on the local cattlemen's association and became known as a fair, honest man whose word was his bond. They were respected in their community, known for their integrity and their hospitality. In 1890, when they had been married 11 years, Joseph Jensen passed away peacefully in his sleep. He left a portion of his ranch to Marcus, recognizing him as the son he had never had. The additional land and resources allowed Marcus to expand their operation significantly. They now ran a successful horse and cattle ranch that employed several ranch hands and provided a comfortable living for their growing family. On their 15th wedding anniversary in 1894, Marcus took Felicity back to the creek where he had proposed. The spot had become a special place for them, somewhere they went when they needed to reconnect and remember their beginnings. They stood hand in hand beside the water, older now, but still deeply in love. 15 years, Felicity marveled. It feels like both forever and no time at all. The best 15 years of my life, Marcus said, and I look forward to 50 more, God willing. 50 more years of working side by side, raising our children, building our legacy. Felicity turned to face him fully. Do you remember what you promised me that day you proposed, that you would make sure I was happy? I remember every word I said to you that day. You kept that promise, Marcus. You have made me happier than I ever dreamed possible. This life we built together, it exceeds anything I imagined when I arrived in Jerome all those years ago. Marcus cupped her face in his hands, his touch as gentle now as it had been that first day in the schoolhouse when they admitted their feelings. You made me whole, Felicity. Before you, I was just existing, working towards some vague future. You gave me purpose and direction. You gave me a reason to build something lasting. Every good thing in my life stems from the day I met you. They kissed beside the creek, the same spot where they had become engaged, renewing their commitment to each other and to the life they continued to build. When they returned to the house that evening, their children had prepared a surprise anniversary celebration with homemade decorations and a special dinner. The family gathered around the table, laughing and talking, and Felicity looked at each face with profound gratitude. Matthew, now 14, was already showing signs of the fine man he would become. He had his father's work ethic and his mother's thoughtfulness. Flora, 12, was brilliant and curious, constantly reading and asking questions about everything. Samuel, 9, was the family adventurer, always coming home with scraped knees and exciting stories. They were good children, being raised with love and discipline, education, and practical skills. As the years moved toward the turn of the century, the Garrett family continued to thrive. Matthew eventually took over much of the day-to-day ranch operations, allowing Marcus to focus on horse training and breeding. Flora briefly attended a teaching college in Flagstaff before returning to Jerome to teach at the school where her mother had first worked. Samuel, true to his adventurous nature, spent time traveling through the West before settling down to work with his father and brother on the ranch. Marcus and Felicity became grandparents multiple times over as their children married and started their own families. The ranch house expanded again to accommodate family gatherings, and Sunday dinners became a cherished tradition with 3 generations gathered around an enormous table. In 1910, on a warm summer evening, much like the one when they had first arrived at their ranch, Marcus and Felicity sat on their porch watching the sunset. They were in their 50s now, weathered by years of hard work and sun, but still vital and engaged with life. Their hair showed silver threads, and their hands bore the marks of decades of labor, but their love for each other had only deepened with time. "Do you ever regret it?" Marcus asked suddenly. "Giving up city life, the comfort and culture of the East? Do you ever wish you had chosen differently?" Felicity looked at him with surprise. "Never, not once. Why would you even ask that?" "I just want to make sure you have been happy, that I gave you a good life. Marcus Garrett, you gave me the best life." Felicity took his hand, threading their fingers together. "You gave me love and respect and partnership. You gave me children and grandchildren. You gave me purpose and a home and belonging. Every single day I thank God that Henry Blackwell was not there to meet me, because it meant I found you instead. You are my great love, the answer to prayers I did not even know to pray. If I had to live my life over, I would not change a single thing, because every choice led me to you." Marcus pulled her close, kissing her temple. "You are my heart, Felicity. You always have been, from that very first day. I loved you when you were covered in dust and exhausted. I loved you when you were nervous about teaching. I loved you on our wedding day. I loved you when you gave me our children. I love you more now than ever before. You are woven into every part of my life. Every dream I have dreamed, every goal I have achieved. We built this life together, and it has been glorious." They sat together as the stars emerged, comfortable in their silence, secure in their love. Inside the house, they could hear their grandchildren playing, their children's voices as they prepared to leave for their own homes. The ranch stretched around them, prosperous and beautiful, a testament to decades of hard work and partnership. Their story had begun with dust and desperation, with a broken promise and an uncertain future. But it had become a story of love and resilience, of 2 people who found each other at exactly the right moment and built something lasting. Marcus had seen past Felicity's dusty dress and exhaustion to the remarkable woman beneath. He had drawn her a bath and given her privacy to feel human again. But more importantly, he had given her hope and a future. Together, they had created a legacy that would extend through generations. Their children and grandchildren would tell the story of how Marcus and Felicity met, how a cowboy's kindness had sparked a love story for the ages. They would remember the values their grandparents embodied: hard work, integrity, compassion, and unwavering commitment to each other. As they grew older still, Marcus and Felicity continued to be active in their community and devoted to their family. They celebrated their golden wedding anniversary in 1929, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, a sprawling family that was their greatest achievement. The ranch continued to prosper under Matthew's management, and Flora's children were being educated with the same care and attention she had received from her mother. When Marcus passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1932 at the age of 79, Felicity grieved deeply but without regret. They had been granted 53 years together, years filled with love and purpose. She continued living on the ranch, surrounded by family, telling stories about their life together to anyone who would listen. Her memories of that first day, standing dusty and desperate in Jerome's main street, never faded, nor did her memories of Marcus's kindness, his steady gray-blue eyes, and the way he had seen her worth when she felt worthless. Felicity lived to be 82, passing away in 1935, surrounded by her children. In her final moments, she smiled and whispered Marcus's name, and those present said she looked like a young woman again, radiant with love and joy. They buried her beside Marcus on a hill overlooking their ranch, with a view of the creek where he had proposed. The legacy they built continued through their descendants. The ranch remained in the Garrett family for generations, a testament to the foundation Marcus and Felicity had laid. Their story became family legend, told and retold at gatherings, a reminder that love can bloom even in the harshest circumstances, that kindness matters, and that two people committed to each other can build something that lasts beyond their own lifetimes. Their love story had begun with a dusty dress and a cowboy's compassion. It had grown into a partnership that weathered every storm, celebrated every joy, and created a family legacy that honored both their individual strengths and their united purpose. They had loved each other fiercely and faithfully from that first meeting until death parted them, and even then, their love continued through the family they had created and the values they had instilled. In the end, Marcus and Felicity Garrett's story was proof that sometimes the worst moments of our lives lead us to the best parts of our future, that kindness is never wasted, and that true love, once found, can sustain us through anything life brings. Their ranch still stands in Arizona, and their descendants still tell the story of how a desperate woman covered in dust and a compassionate cowboy found each other on a July day in 1878 and built a love that would echo through generations.